Hey everybody, I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jesse.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the Eunorau UHVO.
Next on Now Let's Review. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that Eunorau did send us this bike for review, but that will not affect our review in any way. We put all of the products that we review through rigorous testing, and all of our thoughts and opinions are based on that testing.
When you look at the Eunorau UHVO, you will probably notice one of two things first. One is that there is absolutely no branding anywhere visible on the bike, which I find very odd. Second is that this bike has front and rear suspension, which is something not commonly found on e-bikes that can be considered affordable. The front fork is a Zoom Vaxa with adjustable preload and 100mm of travel, and the rear shock is a KS A5 air shock. The suspension on this bike actually compresses quite a bit and makes the ride incredibly smooth both on and off-road. Also helping with the smooth ride and off-road capabilities are the Kenda 27.5 by 3-inch tires. In my opinion, this is the perfect tire size for an off-road e-bike. The typical 4-inch wide fat tires found on so many e-bikes are just too big in many circumstances, and the typical mountain bike tires around 2 inches wide are often too narrow to safely control the weight and power of an electric bike. The 3-inch wide tires on this bike are a perfect balance between the two, and I wish more electric bikes would come from the factory with this tire size. The tires are mounted on 27.5-inch black alloy rims which fit the bike's aesthetic well. The seat is on the firmer side, but is still relatively comfortable, although if you're riding off-road with this bike, then you'll likely be standing up on the pedals pretty often. Something I look for with most bikes when I'm testing them is like, does it rattle? Does it make noises that concern me? Do things seem loose or floppy or flimsy? This one is pretty solid overall. I haven't had anything really making any weird noises. Got a nice paint finish, I really like it, and yeah, overall this is a solid bike.
Now let's talk about probably the biggest feature of this bike, and that is the dual suspension. So we have front suspension, which we see a lot on bikes. How was the front suspension? Let's separate the two.
It works pretty well. It's very soft. It is adjustable. You have adjustable preload, so you can kind of tune it to your liking. It's very easy to compress the front suspension, which is good for, you know, soaking up a lot of bumps and stuff, but it's almost bouncy and springy. So when you're riding on the road, like if you're pedaling hard, the bike just kind of bounces up and down on the front suspension. With a little more time spent adjusting it, I probably could have taken care of that, but it is on the softer side. That being said, it does work well to absorb a lot of the impacts that you're gonna face when riding off-road. So overall, I'm pleased with the front suspension.
Now let's talk about the rear suspension. This has got kind of a funky swing arm, and here is the actual, damper. How does the suspension travel and how does it feel?
So a lot of e-bikes, or bikes in general that come with rear suspension, basically come with semi-functional rear suspension that's for show. This one really impressed me. This compresses a lot, it's got a good amount of travel, and you can notice the difference between a bike like this with working rear suspension and other e-bikes or regular bikes that have hardtails. Dropping off of curbs, going over rough roots and rocks and stuff, you could feel on this bike that the suspension was compressing and really working to absorb those bumps and make the ride a lot smoother. So I was very impressed with the ride quality of this bike. The UHVO's frame is made of an aluminum alloy and the matte red finish has held up well. Rather than go over each of the bike's dimensions, we'll put up a screenshot showing them all so that you can pause the video to look if you're interested. The bike features a Shimano Altus 7-speed drivetrain, but the 14 to 28 tooth gears offer one of the worst gear ratios of any bike I've ridden. Even in gear 7, I have to pedal extremely quickly just to keep up with the bike's 20 mph top speed, which could easily be solved by a larger crank wheel or with better gearing. The UHVO has 5 levels of cadence sensing pedal assist, and modes 1 through 4 actually do more to assist pedaling than completely taking over, which is a common problem with cadence sensing bikes. I really only used mode 5 on the road to achieve the fastest speed I could, but I found modes 3 and 4 to be my favorite when riding off-road. The engagement and disengagement aren't perfectly smooth, and there is a bit of a delay for each, but it's far less jumpy and abrupt than the pedal assist of many electric bikes. The pedal assist is from a 350-watt hub motor mounted on the back wheel, which I personally think is far too underpowered for this bike. The UHVO is a very off-road capable bike, and riding up and down hills is something a bike like this is built for. However, the motor struggles to help the bike up hills, and the acceleration is lacking as well. A 500 or 750 watt motor would be a much better fit for this bike and would make hill climbing and trail riding even more enjoyable than they already are. To its credit, the motor is nearly silent, and the loudest noises you'll hear when riding are the tires on the ground and the mechanical sounds of the chain, pedals, and gears shifting. In addition to the pedal assist, you can also control the motor with a thumb throttle, but I have some major issues with this. The throttle on this bike is on the wrong side.
Oh my gosh. Wait, what do you mean?
So it's on the left handlebar, and anyone who has ever ridden a motorcycle, a scooter, a jet ski, a snowmobile, an ATV, anything that has handlebars and wheels essentially, knows that the throttle is always on the right handlebar. Never on any vehicle am I looking for the throttle on the left handlebar, so it's just a very frustrating issue for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. People who have grown up riding these kind of vehicles probably know what I'm talking about. So I wish that this bike had the throttle on the right handlebar.
Okay, but Ethan, I mean, I'm looking at this here and there's a screw and it's wired, so I could move it over here. There's not a lot of room because the shifter is right here, and the bell, but I could move the bell over here and the throttle over here. The shifter might be in the way. I might have to really, and that might not work.
Right, and I'm sure that's why they put it on the left handlebar. I'm sure they put the throttle there because the shifter is a thumb shifter on the right handlebar. I get that they're short on room over there, but it's just a fundamentally problematic issue for me. But this brings me to my second point, which is if they moved the throttle to the left handlebar because of a space issue due to the shifter on the right handlebar, make it a twist throttle. If they just simply replaced the thumb throttle with a twist throttle, they could fit it on the right handlebar and keep the shifter over there. So I wish that was something they at least considered when making this bike. And I know this isn't the only bike with this issue. I don't mean to rat on this bike too much. This is a general issue I have with certain e-bikes that have throttles on the left handlebar. If the issue is space, just make it a twist throttle and this whole issue will go away. The UHVO features ProMax hydraulic front and rear disc brakes with 180mm rotors that have great feel and stopping power. On the left handlebar is the display, which is easy to read and shows the speed, mileage, trip distance, battery level, average speed, max speed, and the pedal assist level. The power button, menu button, and buttons to change the pedal assist level are all found on the display unit. Also featured is an LED headlight that's more for making the bike visible than it is for actually lighting the way in the dark. A battery-operated taillight is also included. Powering everything is a 36-volt, 13-amp-hour removable lithium-ion battery with a USB port that gives the bike a claimed range of 30 miles per charge. I tested the range on a combination of roads and trails with lots of elevation changes and using a mix of pedal assist and throttle, and I actually managed to get about 34 miles out of it. I like when the claimed ranges are an accurate estimate and aren't overstated with perfectly ideal conditions, so props to Eunorau for being realistic with their range estimates. You can buy this bike with an upgraded 17-amp-hour battery for increased range, which costs an additional $400. The UHVO weighs in at 55 pounds, so you can probably get away with putting it on a heavy-duty bike rack. It has a maximum payload capacity of 375 pounds, which is a lot higher than most e-bikes we've tested. You can also buy a rack and fender kit for this bike, making it a great option for commuting as well.
All right, so Ethan, 350 watt motor, decent range. I wasn't expecting 35 miles. And then dual suspension. How much does this bike cost?
So this bike is going for $1,399 US right now, which I think is a very fair price for this bike. I have been impressed with this bike from the get-go. It has the perfect tire size, great suspension front and rear, very off-road capable bike. I would expect something like this to be closer to $2,000, so the fact that it's below $1,500 is really impressive to me.
The headlight is good, but it's not great, and the rear light is decent, it's okay. I think that you would probably want to add a helmet that actually has a light on it. This is so bright that it's just picking it up as white. This is it's flashing red right now. I don't know if you can tell. Definitely one of these Lumos helmets would help with the safety aspect, especially if you were thinking of commuting, but maybe this isn't a commuter bike.
Well, to that point actually, you can buy a fender and rack kit for this bike. So if you were going to commute on it, you can get fenders to block the dirt and the water, and you can get a rack to store things. So depending on what you're looking for, you can configure this bike to be a commuter or to be an off-road toy kind of like this. So it is versatile in that way.
All right, so then this begs the question, Ethan, who is this bike for?
I would say this bike is for someone who wants to ride off-road and wants to actually ride some relatively challenging terrain. I think this is probably the most capable off-road bike that we've tested so far, and that includes things, like the Ariel X-Class and other, off-road oriented bikes. This one genuinely impressed me on all the trails I rode it on, all the terrain I've taken it on. The suspension is just great. It really is an off-road bike. So I would say if you are looking to buy this bike, you should get it if you want to ride trails, you want to ride maybe even a little bit of downhill. I wouldn't go like crazy downhill mountain biking with this because it is more of a trail bike than an actual like mountain bike. But that having been said, this can handle basically anything the average person or even above average bike rider is probably going to encounter riding on trails. And thank you guys for watching this review of the Eunorau UHVO. If you like this video, do us a favor, hit the like button, it really helps us out. Also subscribe to the channel if you're interested in e-bikes, e-scooters, e-skateboards, e-motorcycles, e-cars, all kinds of stuff. So we have lots of content on the way, and share this video with someone who might be interested. It will help us out a lot as well.
All right, we'll see you next time. Now let's review.